Hey, folks, we are live, and I am so excited to have you here for the kickoff of the Life Unleashed content series. This is the sister series to our recent Work Reimagined series. And in this series, we are going to focus on letting go of societal expectations and designing the life that you want. Um, so as we're getting started, I would encourage you go to the YouTube comment section of this video and introduce yourself. So let us know who you are, where you're coming from, and what you want to learn today. And I'll tell you here. So here are all of the things that you told me by the survey that we had over 100 people fill out last week. The things that you said you wanted to learn. You wanted to understand the options available, how to figure out what you actually want. Once you have a big idea, what steps do you actually take from there? You wanted to learn about overcoming the fear that the next thing won't actually be better. So asking that question, like, will the grass be greener? And you wanted to hear examples of how other people have designed their lives. So drop your name, where you're from, in the chat, and tell us, is there one of these topics that you're interested in exploring today? Or is there something else that we can talk through, either on this session or a future session? And I see Jolie from Calgary, welcome. Gramfus from Southern California, and excited to understand what's realistic and doable and how to work toward it. I see Blythe and Rob from Northeast Tennessee, interested in breaking big ideas into goals and smaller steps. Love it. We see Kim from North Carolina, Mel Murphy in Dublin, Tracy in North Carolina, Jared in Rhode Island. Welcome. You're pretty close to me. I'm here in Boston at the moment. Julie in Kansas City, Kelly from Tampa. And Anita. Hey, Anita. So glad you're here. And Christina from Colorado. So we got a few more folks joining. Please keep introducing yourself. Let us know who you are, where you're from. And of these things that people have told me they wanted to hear about, is there one in particular that sticks out to you, or something else? And let me share while we're getting started, I'll share a little bit of context about this new Life Reimagined content series. Um, I think so many people, when they first learn about financial independence or personal finance, they think um, with an all or nothing mindset, right? They're either set financially and never need to work again, but if not, then they need to work long hours and grind it out at a job they don't really like, right? It feels like sometimes that there's this all or nothing message. And I know that so many of you who are here have embraced that it's not all or nothing, right? There's a lot of gray area in between those two extremes that you can take advantage of. And so that's what I'm here and excited to talk about in this content series. And I feel like if you're here, the likelihood is that you have more options than you think. Whether you're paying down debt, whether you have solid emergency savings or an FU fund, or if you've reached Coast-Fi or beyond, you have more options. And when we realize we have options, it can be scary, right? And it can be overwhelming to figure out, okay, I have these options. What do I actually want to do with them? Right? It brings up a lot of questions. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight and in the rest of this content series. So what options are available to you right now? And then once you realize you have options, how do you actually figure out what you want? There's this paradox of choice. When you have so many options, what do you actually want to do with them? And how do you claw back time and energy to figure that out? And so those are some of the topics that we're going to be considering here together. So I see we have a few more folks who have joined and are introducing themselves. I see Steve from Cleveland, Melody from Texas, Um, so having some uncertainty around the coast-fi number not being enough, with uncertainty for the future, that's definitely an important question. Rachel from Birmingham, Catherine from Virginia, and Steve in Rochester, New York. If you're just joining us, introduce yourself in the chat and let us know who you are, where you're from, and if there's more, if there's something else besides what's on this list or anything on this list that resonates with you that you want to learn about today. So today we're diving into the question, I have options, now what? And I'm really excited about this discussion because I think this can be a challenging question to answer. When I first learned about FI and FU money, it didn't really sink in still that like money was something that could be used to improve my life and to design the life that I wanted. It still felt like it was this like monopoly money that was meant for some future date rather than something that I could use right now. And I wish that I had understood that earlier. And I think it would have saved me a lot of frustration and misery. So I'm hoping I can help you realize that you have more options on this call so that you don't necessarily get to that same place that I did. Before we dive in, I want to share a couple housekeeping things. If you haven't yet, go into the YouTube comment section and tell us who you are and where you're coming from. Please use the YouTube comment section similar to how you would use a Zoom chat. I want to hear from you. I'll be asking questions and asking for responses from you throughout this time, and I would encourage you to ask questions there as well. And for anyone who's watching the replay later, I would encourage you, if you have questions as you're watching this, feel free to ask those and we'll go back and answer them later. And then lastly, I'll encourage you to stick around until the end because I'll be sharing a special bonus at the end. So let's dive in. So many of you actually heard about this event, I think, from Women's Personal Finance or the Retired Millennial or Location Indie. And many of you were, already on my email list, but many of you are new. And so I want to introduce you to myself and tell you a little bit more about who I am and what I do. So a little background on me, I am an adventurer, a part-time van lifer, wife, dog mom, sourdough enthusiast, and I'm a writer, speaker, and coach. One of the identities that I claim is that I'm a learner. I'm a student of financial independence and lifestyle design. And I'm a teacher at heart. And for me, no learning process is ever complete until I can turn around and share it with someone else. And that's what motivates me to do the work that I do. And to, when I originally started the blog and when we started the YouTube channel, it's to share all of the things that we've learned. Because I can't learn something and keep it to myself, basically. And I founded the Pioneers along with my spouse in 2018 to chronicle our journey. And while financial freedom is one of the core tenets of our journey, we also believe that the journey to FI should be as remarkable as the destination. So we don't focus on making extreme sacrifices, and instead we're focused on how can you use the financial freedom that you are building along the way to design a life that you don't want to retire from. Okay, and that's the focus for us. Right, so that's the mission. Our mission is to design a life we don't want to retire from and to help other people do the same. Right? To help people figure out what you truly love to do and what your values are, to align your time, energy, and money with those values, and then build financial freedom and the confidence to use it to make your life better. And so tangibly, we've helped people do a lot of things, including change careers to something that they enjoy more, or that provides them with more flexibility, to go part-time, take a sabbatical, um, start their own businesses or passion projects, become self-employed freelancers, and even for people to become digital nomads. So there's so many options available out there to you. If you can, get the courage to grab hold of those things. So I see we had a few more folks join. Thank you so much for letting us know who you are in the chat. I see Diane from Cleveland, Sarah from Wisconsin, Hope from Portland, Kirsten from Pittsburgh, and Jennifer from Michigan. So glad that you guys are here. So let me talk you through what we're going to do in the next hour together today. And so you're going to walk away from this workshop knowing a couple of things. So first, how to apply lifestyle design to your life. And first, we're going to define it and say, this is actually what lifestyle design is, and walk through that process so you can see how it applies to your situation. We're going to talk about exactly what I just said, the phases and the immediate next steps that you'll be able to take coming out of this conversation today. We're also going to be talking about the stages of financial freedom and how you can grab hold of freedom long before financial independence to start designing the life that you want. And then we're also going to talk about a bunch of examples of people who are doing this, regular people who are designing lives that they love. And then finally, I hope that I provide you with a ton of value today. And after that, I'm going to share a unique opportunity for you to go deeper and take your lifestyle design journey to the next level. So if you're new to this may be a new idea for you. For those of you who've been on these before, you know that I always, always, always ask people to make some sort of commitment to take some sort of action coming out of this conversation. And the reason why I do that is we listen differently and pay attention differently when we're expecting to need to say, here's what we're taking away and here's an action that we're taking as a result, rather than just passively listening or passively consuming. Okay, so what I want to see in the comments is I want to see yeses and pinky promises and 100%. Are you committed to taking some kind of action, big or small, coming out of this conversation today? Okay. I am excited to see these yeses coming through, and excited to see what actions that you decide to take coming out of this. And some very emphatic yeses with multiple exclamation points and some heck yes, and definitely awesome. Okay, so let's dive in then, because I feel like in order to apply lifestyle design, we need to understand what it is. And I think it's important to break it down into its component parts, right? So, what is lifestyle and what is design? And then let's put those two things together. Okay, so lifestyle is really the sum total of the decisions for how you spend your time, your energy, and your money. Okay. And your lifestyle includes so many different areas. I think sometimes there's this thing around work-life balance, right? That there's two parts to your life. There's work and there's your life. And I think that our lifestyle is so much bigger than that. It does include work, but it also includes our finances, fun and play, and the things that we enjoy doing, growth and learning, relationships, family and friendships, and also our well-being, and our physical and emotional and mental well-being. as well as the legacy and the impact that we want to have on the world. All of these things come together to build up what is our lifestyle. And sometimes I think of lifestyle design as like, or our life as a pie, right? So we have this pie, and for many of us, and I know this was true for me, work takes up more of that pie than we want it to be. But we want to make sure that we have space in our life for all of these things that are important to us, right? Our work, our finances, the hobbies and activities that we love to do, learning and growth, relationships, our health, and then the impact that we want to make in the world. Okay. So then let's go in and talk about then what is design? And I'm not just looking at, what does the dictionary define design as? I'm asking, how do the best designers in the world approach design? Okay. And that led me to design thinking. And design thinking is an interactive process that includes a number of things. So, building a deep understanding of who will benefit from the design, um, challenging assumptions that you or they might have, redefining the problems so we understand, like, here's what we're really trying to solve for, identifying alternative strategies and solutions. So, coming up with a bunch of potential ideas that may be off the wall, and stuff that we would have never expected. And then experimenting, testing, and getting feedback along the way to be able to adjust. Okay. So, I want to combine then lifestyle and design together, to share more with you this framework. And I think of lifestyle design then as an iterative process, right? So going back to that design thinking, it's an iterative process of designing a life that aligns with your values, your strengths, your nature, your dreams, your passions, and your purpose. Okay. And you're discovering all of those things all along that path. And I'll show this more to you in a minute, but I think of lifestyle design as a process. It's not something that we do and it's sort of like one and done, right? It's a process that continues throughout the course of our life. And so let me show you what I mean by that. So as we said, lifestyle design is this iterative process, and you don't just do it once, right? You continue to move through the cycle. But in stage one, I think of that as you're identifying the elements of your ideal life. Okay. So in this stage, mindfulness and reflection are really important, and they help you to understand, like, what do you really want? Instead of what do you think you should want? I think we get really stuck in the shoulds. And so this part of the process helps you figure out what you actually want. And so if we sort of go through some of those steps of what happens in a design process, right? In this stage, we start to seek to understand who we are, right? What we value and what we really want. We challenge assumptions, about what we should do and who we should be and what's possible. And we start crafting our own definitions of what success means and looks like. And then we move into stage two. And stage two is where you dream big. So you take everything that you learned about yourself in stage one and use that as a launching point to figure out how many different possibilities there could be to bring those things together. Okay. So in this stage, you brainstorm a whole variety of options, and then you determine ways that you can close the gap between the life you have and the life that you want. And we'll talk through all of these stages in more detail, later in the call. And then you get into stage three. Okay. So you take your big ideas and then you figure out how to move from ideas to action through experimentation. So stage three is experiment and adjust. And I don't actually encourage people to jump in with both feet or dive headfirst, whatever the analogy is, right away. It's important to figure out like what questions do I have, including things like would I actually like this or do I just think that I would like it? So that you can figure out what steps that you can take to answer those questions. And then you can adjust your process based on what you learned. And then this is where the process piece comes into it. Because then once you experiment, right, you then learn more about yourself and what you want moving forward. And so it helps you to refine those elements of your ideal life and what you really want. And as you experiment and take action, you start to see, like, oh, I can actually do this. And you start to build a new level of confidence, which actually helps you dream bigger as you continue to move through this process. So, this is really a continuous process that happens, throughout our lives in a formal and an informal way. Okay. So, I'll give the example. So I went through this as a formal process in 2019 for the first time, with a group of people, and it was incredible. And I'm doing a lot of the things that I dreamed about. I dreamed up in stage 2 at that point. And then for about 4 or 5 years, I was in this process of experimenting and adjusting and refining and tweaking, right? And continuing to move through that. And then again this fall, I actually went through this process formally again with another group of people, to really say, okay, I've achieved a lot of the things that I dreamed big about 5 years ago. And now I'm ready to really like dream big again. And so that so it's something that, it's continuous and it can be sometimes it's tweaking and shifting and changing. And then sometimes you're going back and saying, I want to do this process again in a more thorough way. Okay. Um, so yeah, let me tell you a little bit about the steps that I took to design a life that I love, because I spent the last many years, 5, 6 years, trying out different tools and frameworks to figure out what I really wanted out of life, both day to day and long term vision. And then applied everything that I learned. And so, a little bit about my story. So, in 2018, I quit a toxic job, and took 6 months off of work to focus on my mental health, because I was experiencing some pretty severe depression and anxiety and burnout, at the time. And that was really a catalyst for me to say, I really need to make some serious changes, in my life here. And that was around the time that I learned about financial independence and FU money and all of that. And so was really put into a situation where I had to use the money, to make my life better. And my hope is that you don't get to that point. My hope is that you make the decision before having some sort of mental breakdown, um, and that you realize you can, use that. Okay, so after I quit the toxic job, and took 6 months off, I actually went back to work part time. So I went back 3 days a week, which allowed me to focus on my health and my relationships. And then when I started, feeling like I had some excess mental energy, I decided that instead of increasing my hours at my job, I was going to start my coaching business, and focus on that passion of mine. And so about 2 years later, from or about 2 years after starting the part-time job and about a year after starting the business, I actually was able to quit my job and become a full-time entrepreneur, quote unquote full-time. I don't actually work full-time hours. Um, but I've been an entrepreneur for about 3 years now, which is wild. Pandemic time is crazy. Um, but I'm there's so many things that I love about it. Um, right? I wake up without an alarm clock. I do work at the pace that I want to do. I get to do what I want, when I want, where I want. I work about 25 hours a week, which gives me plenty of time to focus on health and relationships, and well-being. And then a more recent development for us is we experimented and built out a camper van because we wanted to prioritize travel, in our lifestyle. And so we experimented, by renting a camper van, and then deciding we wanted to build one out ourselves. And then in this past year, Corey actually quit his job and joined me as an entrepreneur. And we spent about 6 months, of the year last year traveling, in our van, which, was incredible. And, it's sometimes it's baffling to me that, like, I look at it and it's like, this is the life that I sort of created and envisioned for myself back in 2019 when I went through this original lifestyle design process. And I'm just so grateful that we're in this space. And sometimes people look at it and say, like, oh, they must already reach financial independence. And we, okay, I think I'm back. A second, but I will continue. So, yeah, so I was saying that sometimes people look at our lives and they think that we've already reached financial independence, but we haven't. We're only about 50% of the way there. And our whole focus has been designing a life that we don't want to retire from. We want to make so many small changes that when we actually get to that point where we've reached like we don't need to change anything. We've already designed the life that we wanted. And so that's the goal. And we did this through working through this lifestyle design process that we're going to talk through a bit more on the call. Before we get into it, though, I want to actually talk about some motivation. I know so many of you are here because you're motivated by financial freedom. And so as you think about more about designing your life and the investment of time and money that you might put into it, and some of those questions that someone was asking, like, how do I get comfortable taking this coast fi approach? I want to share with you what it looked like for us, and sort of the true cost of it. Before I started designing my life, when I was in the throes of burnout, right, I wasn't sleeping well. I was miserable. I was exhausted all of the time. I was too tired to cook, right? And so I would order takeout and buy expensive groceries that were super easy to make. Um, I thought that I deserved to treat myself because I hated my job, and so I might as well, like, reap the benefits of it. Um, and so treated myself with fancy dinners and fancy vacations and getting that hit of dopamine when you buy some random thing off Amazon, that makes you feel better for just 1 second. And you might be seeing, like, dollar signs popping up, right, as we're talking about this. And me too, as I talk about it. At the time, though, we didn't even realize what was happening. Like, we always considered ourselves to be like the frugal people who, we're good with money. Um, yeah. And so I want you to think about it for a second, right? Because this could be really motivating. And I want to turn it to you. Um, and I want to hear from you all in the chat. Like, what do you spend money on because you're busy, stressed, or unhappy? I see Sandy saying in the chat, this is me to a T. And I imagine, Sandy, you and me are not alone in this. So yeah, tell us, um, what what do you spend money on because you're busy, stressed, or unhappy? Um, right? Is it takeout? Is it fancy luxury vacation? Is it, the random stuff off Amazon or Target or, different kinds of things? I see, yeah, clothes and weekend trips, so many lattes, Uber Eats junk food, yup, coffee, pricier food and produce that rots in the fridge. Therapy, yeah, it's funny when we were talking about the like true hourly wage, I actually wonder like like how much money do we actually spend on healthcare and therapy because of our jobs? So that's an important one to think about. Packaged food, books. Yeah. So when back at this time, I would always I would buy so many books. And then once I had more time, I realized I could get most of them from the library on my Kindle. Um, we have a big home. Yeah, yeah. Well, Slavka, I feel like, is the best of us here, because she says she makes quick mortgage payments so she doesn't have to keep working full time. That is the ideal thing to do in this situation. Most of us don't have that much control. So I I'm glad that I'm not alone in the fact that I spent money on a whole bunch of things that I didn't need. So I actually want to share how much it cost me. And we actually were able to like quantify this. Okay. So 1 year after going through and quitting that toxic job and starting on this lifestyle design process, I looked back at my spending. And after just 1 year, I we realized that we spent $17,000 less. And then we went and looked at the categories and realized that it was all in categories that would be considered convenience or escape, right? So convenience being take out food or Ubers instead of taking public transit, or the food that was super easy to make at the grocery store, or this like treat yourself kind of stuff, restaurants, the random purchases off Amazon, right? That's that convenience and escape spending. And I would say not only do we not spend that money now, life is actually so much better. Right? We're more energized, motivated. We have time to focus on the things that that matter most to us. And so one thing that I want to say is if you're obviously you need to look at the finances in a way that is going to work for you, but I would encourage you to think about like what could this virtuous cycle look like for you? Right? When you get into a situation that's even better, right, for you, are there things that you would spend less on? And you could factor that in to the decisions to, make decisions to improve your lives. Okay. Um, so now I want to really get into some of the specific questions that you all asked in the survey. So the first one, and there were a bunch of questions similar to this, are just like, what are the actual options that are available to me? Okay. And some of you may have seen this slide, some of you may have not. It may be new to you. So across the top of this chart are what I think of as the 5 different levels of financial freedom. Okay, so you could be paying off debt, or you could be debt free. The key for that is that every debt you pay off, your expenses go down. Oh, goodness. Your expenses go down, and therefore you can either choose to make less money, right? Or you can save more, or you can spend more, right? On things that you value. The second one is FU money. So when you have this, emergency fund plus, right, that allows you to get out of a bad situation or take advantage of an opportunity. We have Coast financial independence. which is the point where saving any more money for retirement becomes optional because what you've already invested will grow to provide you with a comfortable traditional retirement by the time you're 65 or 60 or whatever age you put into the calculations. There's semi-retirement where you could be covering part of your cost of living with your portfolio and then part of it with active income. And then there's full financial independence. Okay, so I think of these sort of 5 stages and where you are on these. And underneath, you'll see that there's different lifestyle designs that you can unlock when you get to different stages. Okay, so you can do things like finding a job that you enjoy more, even if it pays less, or negotiating flexibility, or taking a sabbatical or a mini retirement, or becoming an entrepreneur, or working less, right? Working part time or seasonally. And I think the interesting thing here is, like, as you can see from this chart, the only lifestyle design choice that requires full financial independence is to retire and never earn another dollar ever again. Um, but in the FI community, it feels like there's so many people, and I was one of these people, right, who felt like, well, if I'm not at FI, I need to be continuing to push and grind, and push hard toward that goal. When in actuality, there are so many options along the path, and you can take advantage of these options and still reach financial independence eventually. It just might take a little bit longer. And that's okay. So for us, we're taking this coast fi approach. And so what that means for us is when I was working as an entrepreneur and my husband was still working full time, we decided to decrease our savings rate down to like 20% so that we could buy and build out our camper van. And then we got comfortable with saying, you know, we had 2 years of only saving 20%, like, and that was okay, like, we're still good, right? And so it's a baby step, and so that then helped us have my husband quit his job and take the full Coast Fi approach, which is to just focus on covering your actual costs. And that's what we're currently doing. So actually, I would say we used some FU money in the last year because he was taking a full sabbatical. And now we're getting to the point where we're taking this cover your expenses approach. And then over time, we may decide to generate a little bit more and get maybe to this semi-retirement stage. Um, but it just goes to show that you can use these options along the path, and you can still reach financial independence also. And early retirement may not be as important to you if you get to the point where you actually enjoy the life that you're living. And it might be okay that it takes longer. So I actually want to turn to the chat bar, or the comment box, and I want to hear from you. Which of these lifestyle designs do you want to unlock for yourself? What options do you like? What do you want from this list? Do you want to find a better job, negotiate flexibility, become an entrepreneur, do freelance work, work part time? Let us know what options you want to unlock for yourself. And while we do that, I'm going to tell you about one person who unlocked a ton of options for herself. Okay. And so, yeah, you said you wanted to hear examples of people. So I'm going to tell you about Kara, who used her freedom to design a life that she loved. Okay. So Kara reached Coast Fi and decided that she was in a place where she could make a significant change. But she wasn't quite sure what that looked like. So at the time, she was working in a toxic job that required a significant amount of travel, and she'd be traveling for weeks at a time. Okay, and so she embarked on this lifestyle design process and figured out okay, I'm going to take a sabbatical. So she took a year-long sabbatical to figure out what she wanted to do next and explore her options. And she and her husband lived in Alaska, and they were spending time experimenting with what would snowbirding to Arizona look like, living in Alaska for part of the year since that's where their families are, or traveling down to Arizona in the winter. And then ultimately, after some experimentation, they decided to actually do it the flip-flop way. So they're snowbirds, but they live in Arizona and just in the summers travel to Alaska to visit their families when it's like really crazy hot in Arizona. And so that was one of the dreams that they've made a reality in their life. And then more recently, she decided to return to work part time in a job that had minimal travel, that was fully remote and would allow her to work from Arizona and Alaska or wherever she wanted. Um, so I want to read a quote from her. So she participated in my Design a Life You Love group coaching program, and she says, "Design a Life You Love helped me clarify the things that I enjoy and want to do more of, and realize I can make small changes now. It also helped me accept that it's okay to do and work less. I worked hard to be in the fortunate position I'm in now, um, the fortunate position to choose how I want work to fit into my ideal lifestyle." And I feel like this quote speaks potentially to a lot of us as we're thinking like, I would really love to be able to scale back work, but it's hard to stomach that when we've been in this achievement oriented mindset for so long. Um, so I want to go to the chat because we've heard from quite a few of you of the things that you're interested in grabbing hold of. So Tracy wants to join her husband as an entrepreneur. Melody wants to work part-time so she can focus on what she's passionate about. Melody, I would love for you to drop in the chat. What is that thing that you're passionate about that you would want to work part-time so you could focus on? Um, Gromfus says, want to get to Coast Fi and work part-time as a coach with lots of chill time. Yes. It's great to have lots of chill time. Jessica says, working part-time. Blythe, Coast Fi. Jules would like to find a more flexible job. Mel wants to work part-time on her passion business. Sarah, working part-time or becoming an entrepreneur. And Steve, getting to Coast Fi was enough to feel comfortable taking a sabbatical. So Steve taking a sabbatical right now, that's awesome. And I see Melody just commented again, the thing that she's passionate about is art. So loving painting and drawing. That's awesome. Well, thank you all for sharing more about those things. So I want to dive into then, how do you actually discover what you want? Right? That's, I think, the second question that we get into. Okay, you have options. Now what? What do I actually want from that list of options though? Okay. And this is what we do in stage 1 of the lifestyle design process, where you identify the elements of your ideal life. Okay. And you might be thinking, okay, elements of your ideal life, that's jargony. So let me explain what that means. When I'm talking about the elements of your ideal life, I'm thinking about 3 things. I'm thinking about your what, your why, and your how. Okay. And your what is the activities, the projects, the passions that bring you joy. Your why is your core motivations, your values, and like what drives you forward every day. And then your how is taking into account your uniqueness to make life work for you. What are the conditions that you need to thrive? How can you carry out your what and your why in a way that actually feels really good? Okay. So let me share just an example of things that I've discovered through this process about myself. So, and some of these things I've mentioned already. So parts of my what are learning, teaching and sharing what I've learned, being outdoors, um, and traveling and exploring new places, and building deep relationships. Okay, those are some of mine. And then aspects of my why, one of them is just helping people become more of who they are and want to be, right? Helping them design the lives that they want. For me, also another why is thriving in all areas of my life, and helping other people do the same, right? So you see that sort of learning and teaching coming back over and over again. And then another piece of it for me is this appreciation of beauty and this like seeking out of awe-inspiring experiences. Okay. And then aspects of my how, I would say, include creativity, um, having a strong connection to my emotions, which I think can be both a strength and a limitation. As a highly empathetic person, I often need more time for rest, and so that's really important to take into consideration. And then knowing that I really like to work in small groups, right, and connect with friends in small groups and get to know people in a really deep way. Okay. Um, so, and as you go through this, right, you're not necessarily just saying, okay, these are the things in my what, these are the things in my why, these are the things in my how. It's hard to come up with those things. Okay. So I'll share a few ideas with you. And these are some of the things that we do in my group coaching program, that sort of brings you through and helps you define this for yourself. So one of the things that we do is an energy and engagement audit. And I shared more about this if you're on my email list in yesterday's email. Um, but with an energy and engagement audit, you're actually tracking your days and writing down each activity and ranking it on a scale of 1 to 5. How energizing versus draining was this thing? And how engaging or boring was it? Okay. And you do that for about 4 to 5 weeks. And that helps you get a really clear sense of like, what are the things that were energizing? And what were the conditions under which they were energizing and the reasons why I was doing those things? Okay. So that helps. And then a couple of other reflections that we do is to think about what does our ideal day look like? And if we could choose, what do we value so much that we would want to do it every day, every week, every month, and every year? Okay. So that's getting into what are those sort of habitual things that we want to be incorporated into our life. And then the last thing that we do is reflect on peak experiences. So we look at what are the different peak experiences and I've had in my life. What are the commonalities amongst them? And what can they tell us about what we love to do, our core motivations, and the conditions that we need to thrive? Okay. So those are some of the things. I want to share another example of someone who really discovered, right, what is it that she wanted. So I want to tell you about Kate. Kate participated in the group coaching program a couple years ago. And when I first met her, she was completely burned out. She was at a university administrator and assumed that she'd need to leave her job, even though she found like a lot of meaning and purpose from it. But she thought she had to leave her job to regain her life. Okay. Um, but in working through the lifestyle design process, she realized that she wasn't stuck, right? When she realized there were other options available to her that she could explore, that gave her in some ways so much confidence to negotiate and say no and make work actually work for her. Right? Because she knew that she could leave and there were other good options. Okay. So now I actually, think of her as like the queen of the quiet small quits, because she learned to consistently set boundaries, and do it in a way that she was still adding significant value, to her organization. Um, and, she was able to negotiate to work most of the time, part of the year remotely so that she could move to her ideal location, which was in northern Vermont. And then she was also able to pass off a lot of responsibilities, and hire more people on her team and advocate for that so that she could carry out her work with joy and have more energy. Okay. And I love what she says here. So she said, "I've learned the power of planning and reflection. I love a good to-do list, and yet I've not had success in the past. I'm having now. It's amazing the power of getting clear about what you want and keeping your goals central as you work toward them." Okay. So I want to talk about one more thing. So we're going to talk about dreaming bigger. So that this is a question that I often got from people as well, which is how do I actually dream bigger? Like how do I figure out what's big enough? Um, and so in stage 2 of the lifestyle design process, this is where you take what you learn about yourself in and what the sort of ideal elements are for you and use those to come up with a whole variety of different options. Okay. So the first thing that I always do in my coaching program is to help people cultivate this dreamer mindset. And we do this in a couple of ways. So one, I absolutely love to share and teach the Disney creative strategy. And in this strategy, there's 3 distinct phases. There's the dreamer phase, the realist phase, and the critic phase. Okay. And when we're in these distinct phases, we're creating a specific container for dreaming. Okay. And there's room for planning and critiquing later. We are taking those completely out of the process so that we don't need to judge or shut down any of the ideas. Okay. And then ideas are able to grow and lead to one thing and lead to another thing because we aren't shutting them down. Okay. And then there's a couple of other agreements that, I often have in my group programs. And one of them is to let go of the shoulds. We joke about having a should jar that we should pay attention every time we say the word should to see what that means for us. Is it an external obligation? Is it something that someone else or society has told us that we should want, but do we actually want it? And so we ask each other to reframe anytime we say should. Another one is that we try to focus on possibilities instead of shutting down the ideas as they come up, which is really, really easy to do. And then the last is, I like the yes and approach of improv. And so the idea of improv is that you're going in and someone is creating a premise and you're going to say yes and you're going to roll with it and come up with a new additional exciting, crazy, harebrained idea. Okay. Um, and I would say the important thing about this is if you've ever seen improv, if someone says no, right, in improv, it like completely shuts down the show. And so I'd like to think of brainstorming this way, right? And to think about it as like, we're saying yes, we're accepting an idea as a gift and we're taking it and we're building on it just like in improv. And, someone's going to share something that could spark something for someone else, that could spark something for someone else. And then, down the road, 5 ideas in is an idea you're interested in, but we would have never gotten to that idea had you or anyone shut the idea down early in the process. So that's why it's so important to get into that dreaming phase. Um, okay, so we've talked a little bit about this brainstorming piece already. So it's important then, you build up this dreamer mindset and then use it and put it into action through brainstorming. Okay. And I think of brainstorming as we're coming up with as many ideas as we can possibly think of without evaluating them, right? No evaluation. And this is an important part of the process. And it's something that you can do individually by yourself, but it's also so much better and more productive when you can do it with a group of people who can help share new ideas and perspectives and, bring the things that they know into the conversation. And they can help catch you if you start to critique ideas. And so that's one thing that's really helpful as well. And so brainstorming is beneficial for a number of reasons. So we stop agonizing over finding the one right idea. There's many things that we could be happy doing. Okay, we dream bigger by letting one idea lead to the next and to the next. And it helps us to silence our inner critic. So I actually want to turn to the chat, and I want to hear from you. Am I the only one who struggles with keeping judgment out of brainstorming? So do you struggle with keeping with 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 judging ideas as you're brainstorming them? If I would say if in the chat, drop a one. If yes, if you struggle with that, and drop a two if you never struggle with that. I imagine we're going to see lots of ones in the chat. But yeah, let us know, like, is that a struggle for you? It's definitely a struggle for me. Even sometimes Corey and I will be, recently had a conversation about ideas for the Pioneers. And I realized I was like in a bad mood that day and I was shutting down all of the ideas. And I realized it. And I was like, okay, I'm not I gotta catch this so that we can have, a more productive conversation that actually goes somewhere moving forward. And so, it's important that it still comes up, for everyone, but we can catch ourselves, okay, as we go through it. Um, yeah, and so in the group coaching program that I run, we do some broad brainstorming and mind mapping. How do we bring the different ideas together from your ideal life? And then the one activity that I really love is we create 3 distinct life plans, using a bunch of those ideas, right? And so we have life 1, which is the idea you've been noodling on, right? This is your current life extended forward or something you're thinking about or excited about. But then we gotta get really creative, rather than just iterate on that one plan. And so then life 2 is the main component of life 1 is no longer an option. What would you do instead? And that's where we start to get creative. And then life 3, we get even more creative, which is if money or status were no object, what would you do? Okay. And so those are some of the prompts, and things that I would encourage you to think about. Okay. I want to tell you about somebody who's dreamed really big, Kamran. So when I first met him, he was working at a big retail giant, felt like a small cog in a big machine, and like he wasn't really making an impact, and had some ideas of things that he wanted to try, but didn't really have the confidence to move forward. And since working through some lifestyle design and creating these big dreams, he's made some significant changes. So he figured out how to save for and negotiate to take a summer off from his corporate job, to match his wife's schedule, who worked in a school. And then he spent some time experimenting with different income streams, both freelancing for other companies and his own product development. And then he eventually, was able to transition to self-employment. And also he has embraced his love of DIY, and someday would love to build a house, but is experimenting with building a home office in his backyard, which I think is really, really cool. And what he says is, I knew within 5 years I wanted to have summers off with my family and work for myself. I just didn't know how to get from point A to point B. With the help of Jess and the rest of my cohort, in a few short months, I came away with a definite plan that I was excited and could execute on. Okay. So there's a couple more ideas that unfortunately we're not going to be able to get into today. But one of them is, once I have an idea, how do I actually get from here to there? And Corey's monitoring the chat. He's going to drop in a couple of videos. So the first one is going to be about experimentation. So we have a video there. I would encourage you to go and watch that video. And then, the next question is about fear, right? What if I make changes and the grass isn't greener? right? There was one specific comment that was like, what if I put all of this time and effort into making changes in my life, and then what if I don't like it? Right? That's exactly this question. And for that, I think one, experimentation, right, is incredibly important to help us to know if the grass will be greener so we can gather as much information as we possibly can. Um, and that we can address when these fears and limiting beliefs come up. There's skills and strategies that we can use to work through them. Okay, so Corey's going to drop another video, a link to another video that you can take a look at after this. And these are the strategies that you can use to work through those limiting beliefs. I actually want to do a full live session. And could do a full live session on both of these topics because they're so incredibly important. Okay, so I want to tell you about one more person who really worked through a lot of her fears to take action. So Chelsea was a nurse practitioner and felt really stalled about how she wanted to move forward in her career and in life. And this stagnation felt like it was seeping into her relationships and her health and other aspects of her life. But she was also dealing with the scarcity mindset of like, I have loans, I should be happy doing this thing that I'm doing, right? And sort of that sunk cost kind of thoughts going on there. And so for her, she worked through a lot of those things. And some of the experiments that she did was she decided to reduce her hours that would allow her some more time to explore her options. And then decided that she was interested in learning more about community health. So she ended up taking a permanent role, first a temporary role, and then a permanent role at a community health center. So she was able to experiment with that as well. And then on the side, exploring real estate and DIY and making herself and her well-being a priority. Okay. So stick with me. We are going to go through a few more things. Today, we've covered how you can apply design thinking principles to your own life, options that are available to you at different stages of financial freedom, and examples of people who have designed their lives. And so, I did tell you at the beginning, and ask you to commit to taking some sort of action. Right? So you have a choice. You can keep going in the way that you're going right now, or right, you can begin to make changes to design a life that you love. Or you can continue to make changes to move yourself in that direction. Since I know, some of you are already along that path. Okay. If you want to go deeper into that and feel like you might want some support and a community to work through that process with, I would love to introduce you to my signature group coaching program called Design a Life You Love. The doors to this program officially will open tomorrow for the programs that'll start in February. But if you stick around to the end, you'll actually have the option to get the process started this evening and get a special bonus, which I'll tell you about momentarily. So this program is a 4-month group coaching program specifically for people who are mid-career, right? So typically I'm working with people between 30 and 50 who have some, professional experience under their belt, who really want to figure out what do they want life to look like, right? Like maybe life has, you've done everything that you're supposed to do up to this point, and it still feels like there's something that's a little bit off. Okay, that's what we're focusing on here. Okay, each group will meet over the course of that 4 months every other week. And we meet with a small group of 3 to 4 like-minded people. And I'm pretty selective about who I bring into the program to ensure that every program will have a strong community. You'll get access to my best lifestyle design resources to work through this full lifestyle design process that we just talked about. There's pre-work and reflection for each session. And then you'll also be matched up with an accountability partner for thought partnership and conversation in between the meetings. Okay. And then lastly, you get access to the online platform that I host all of my programs in, so you can connect with people in your program, in other programs, or alumni, okay, of the coaching programs as well. So what will you learn in this? So we walk through this full lifestyle design process. We start with identifying the elements of your ideal life and doing that energy and engagement audit and peak experiences, and thinking about your ideal day and the role that you want work to play in your life. Okay, then we move into dreaming big. So we build that mindset and figure out what possibilities there are, and then do those brainstorming activities. Okay, and then we move into experimentation. So we figure out what ways can you answer the questions that you have through experimentation, and then focus on working through the limiting beliefs that come up as we take action. Okay. And by the time you complete this program, you will build a supportive community that will push you forward. You'll identify what you uniquely value through reflection and experimentation. You'll relearn to dream big, and you'll have a set of ideas that you want to learn more about and pursue moving forward. You'll learn to move from ideas to action through experimentation, and then apply strategies to overcome the barriers and the limiting beliefs that could hold you back. One thing I want to say here is that's important, I think, is that this program is not for everyone. The program is not for you if you're sort of in a place where you're like, I'm okay. Like, I'm willing to stay where I am right now. Like, things are good. Right? If you're not in a place where you're ready to take action, right, the program probably wouldn't be the right thing for you at this time. If you're not, in a space where you're able to do the work or invest in yourself, and if you aren't excited about being in the context of a close, tight-knit community. And then the last thing that I'll say is usually the reason why someone may reach out to me and the program is not a match is if you're currently experiencing an acute episode of burnout, depression, or anxiety. And I would define this as like you're in a space where you don't know if you can make it through the next like 2 weeks or a month. Right? Or 2 months, and you feel like you need to make some sort of immediate change or things are going to go downhill fast. If this is the case for you, I would encourage you to pursue mental health counseling first before jumping into a lifestyle design process. I think not everyone who participates in this program has experienced burnout, but if you have, the program is good for people who are at a place where they think, I'm starting to experience some burnout, and if I don't address it and make changes in the long term, 6 months to a year down the road, like it's going to really start impacting me. Okay. Or if you have experienced that acute burnout, if you've gotten the support that you need and you feel like you're back into a steady state where you've figured out your coping strategies and you're ready to figure out what's next, that's when this program is really good for you. Okay. So let me recap quickly because I know so many of you could benefit from this. It's 4 months of group coaching. We work through the full lifestyle design process. You get matched with an accountability partner. You get access to the online community, action planning templates, and then obviously access to me in Instant Messenger throughout the program. And then you get access to the annual planning process that I bring people through after they go through the program every year. Okay. So if you're interested in learning more, I would encourage you to check out the program overview. Corey's going to drop that into the comments. You'll see that here. So it walks you through a lot more about the program, specifically what you'll get in the program, the benefits. There's testimonials and walking through each of the things. So I would encourage you to go through this and read everything. And then when you click, yes, I want in, or yes, I want to learn more, that's going to take you to a page that's going to take you to a Facebook Messenger chat with me. It's really important for me to get to know each person who wants to join the program so that I can make sure that the program is a match and that the group program is a good match for you and for me and all of that. So reach out to me if you don't like Facebook. If you don't have Facebook, feel free to send me an email and we can chat that way. Typically, we'll have a quick conversation to just get some details to see if the program is a good match, and then from there, we'll set up a Zoom call to really dive in to confirm it and to make sure that you have all the information that you need to make an informed decision. Um, so if you're interested, simply reach out. If you want to get started, you can do so tonight. And if you reach out to me either by email or chat, the messenger chat tonight, I have a special thank you for those of you who attended this. I'm going to throw in a pre-enrollment bonus. And so if you end up reaching out to me tonight and enrolling in the program, you'll get a bonus 60-minute one-on-one coaching session with me as well. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. Enjoy the journey as always. And I look forward to connecting with all of you again soon. Thanks again.